Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Paranormal and Historic Locations and Legends. I'm sure you guys probably get the idea of what we're going to be talking about tonight, but tonight we get to part 3 and the final conclusion revolving around the Amityville horror. Obviously, as some of you guys know, as what we've talked about in the last 2 weeks, 2 weeks ago, we were first talking about the DeFeo family that lived in the house prior to their murders. Then last week, we talked about the Lutz family that moved in a year after the DeFeo family was murdered. Now, we're going to be talking, as well as the movies, too. Should have also added that. Now, we're going to be adding in the controversial facts and the aftermath of not only the Lutz family, but also with the next, also the owners that also with the owners that took over the house afterwards and how it's passed hands over the decades. And then eventually, right at the end of right before we end for tonight, I will eventually reveal from what I've actually been able to find. It's going to be relatively limited, but the true stories, the true story of what really went on in that house, told by some of the people who actually lived there. Just before we get started, I would like to just give a quick few shout outs. Hey, Kelly, good to see you again. Thanks for tuning in. What's up, Jeremy? Good to see you. Hey, Natalie, appreciate you tuning in. So what we're going to be doing first is, because I know I was talking about this last week, which unfortunately I did have to end because I was at the end of time, but I had a few other, we were talking a little bit about the movies that were made, and I had a few other trailers that I wanted to show you guys because 2 weeks ago I showed you guys I showed Amityville 2: The Possession, which was the prequel to the original film. And then last week I showed the trailer for the original movie. I'm going to show 2 more trailers, which I don't usually do at the beginning of the show, but just so you guys can get an idea how popular that the Amityville franchise became. I'm only just going to show trailers of 2 of the films because these are the only 2 other movies that at that time actually featured the house. The rest of the movies that were made throughout the early to mid 90s were focused on supposedly possessed items that once lived in the house itself, which from that moment on was just made for entertainment. There was no truth to it at all. I think it was just trying to cash in how a lot of the horror movies had franchise at that time. But either way, I'll still show you guys the trailers anyway. I'm actually going to begin with Amityville 4 because if you guys have ever seen the first 4 movies, the original Amityville, the second one, which is a prequel, which takes place before the original film, believe it or not, Amityville 4 takes place after the original film due to the house already being empty in that film. And by the time you get to part 3 is when the new owners arrive. So let me just give me 1 second here. I always have issues with sharing the screen. Okay, let me just check the phone just to make sure that you guys can see this, hopefully. Now, this one in particular was the first one that was made for television. This was not originally made for theaters. Yep, okay, we got the screen working. So, you guys, this will only be about 2 minutes, so tell me what you guys think.
For centuries, the Amityville horror has remained in this house. A mystery. A fear.
Ooh.
A curse.
Aunt Helen must have money to burn, sending something this big all the way from Long Island. It has the look of a genuine antique. Mother, it's as ugly as sin.
Now I believe that the evil in that house could transmigrate into that land.
Now the evil of Amityville has escaped.
There's nobody here. Daddy was here.
That it can and will transmigrate into another object.
And only one man can stop it.
You want to go, is that it?
I have to go.
And we have to get everyone out of that house now.
The shape of terror. The power of hell. From the creators of the original Amityville comes the most terrifying chapter. Amityville 4, The Evil Escapes.
Now was one, like I said, this was one of the original last film. I mean, one of the original films. I mean, well, excuse me, one of the first movies that ever showed the possessed item. And the house itself actually only took place like 10 minutes in the entire. Only actually, the house only made an appearance for really 10 minutes in the entire film. But this is the it was one of the first that detailed the possessed items. I just want to give a quick shout out for everyone on my personal chat. Good to see you, Tom. Thanks for tuning in. But here is the final trailer. I'm sure you remember that, Lamp. Yeah, I'm sure you do, Jeremy. But now here is the final trailer. This was again really the last film in chronological order that actually featured the house full time. That is. So here is Amityville 3D.
The whole world knows the story of this house. Now, its terror takes on a new dimension. As the horror reaches out beyond the edge of the screen.
Oh, wow.
Get out! Everybody get out of the house! Dino De Laurentiis presents Amityville 3D.
And yes, as it says here, this picture is not a sequel to the pictures of Amityville 2. I mean, sorry, that was a spam call. I got one. Now, that's actually one of the least known trailers. This is the final. Again, I'm sorry, there was one more. This is the main trailer that's often usually featured with Amityville 3D. And believe it or not, it's actually just stock footage from Amityville 2. But this is the last one. I'll show you guys, and then we'll get down right to business.
This house has a supernatural power to attract audiences. It is the Amityville Horror House, a landmark in the history of motion picture shockers. Now, that power has expanded. Amityville 3D, a film that will draw you into the unknown, envelop you in mystery, and engulf you in evil. A new dimension in the technology of terror.
Yeah, it's really gone all over the place. But let's see. Let me just. All right, so you guys get the idea. So I don't really need to show any more of the trailers. I didn't plan on sharing. I didn't plan on sharing every single one of them. So let me just see now. I just got to share the screen again for the rest of the presentation. Just bear with me for a second. Oh, yes. Okay. I remember now. The segment this is actually another video clip, but this is more on the lines of the like I said, the aftermath of Amityville. This was actually something involving the movie. I just want to see what it is first. If I could. Oh, wait a sec. Wait a minute. You got to click it here. Okay, so this is this is what I was going to present next. This was an actual, again, I know there's obviously a lot more truth to it now than what supposedly was originally said, but I actually have a news clip here of an interview involving George and Kathy. Again, what they originally said was something I think a lot of us originally believed, but we now know that there's definitely a big change to this. So here is the clip. I don't know why my screen keeps going dark.
13 minutes of right now. Back in November 1975, 6 people were killed in an awful mass murder. I know it's got to be awful in a small town on Long Island. The town is called Amityville. The murders took place in this house. 1 year later, George and Kathleen Lutz bought the house and they moved into it with their 3 children. After living there for 28 days, they were convinced the house was possessed by some kind of evil force, and they left their belongings and they fled, and they were really terrified. The events that supposedly took place there during those 28 days have been put down in the best.
It's about a 6-minute clip.
Horror, and there is now a movie out, or about to come out, of the book. George and Kathleen Lutz are with us this morning to talk about what happened during those 28 days in Amityville. And James Brolin, super young man, actor.
Thank you.
Yes, much pleasure. Good to see you again, Jim. He plays George Lutz in the movie, and Jim is with us this morning, and it's great seeing you again.
Great seeing you again.
Lutzes, good morning to you both. All right, first of all, the book and the movie depict all these kind of weird, strange things that happened in the house during those 28 days when you were there. What kind of things, George, happened physically? What were some of the things that happened that scared you?
Well, at first, just moving into the house was fine. It's a lovely house.
Yeah.
And we enjoyed moving in. Within a week, Kathy's hand had been touched by something that we discussed and couldn't explain. It was just something unseen.
Was it just in the daylight, or was it?
Yes,
It was during the day.
right.
Okay.
We also had hordes of flies that would appear within 2 rooms.
Flies.
No matter how many times we would kill them, they would reappear.
All right, now flies can be a real problem in this part of the country in the summer,
Sure.
in any house, you know.
But if you have 2 or 3 or 4 within 1 room, that could be commonplace.
And it
But
was
when
the
you're
winter.
talking over 100,
Well, this was the winter.
yes,
You're talking about how many?
over 100
Over
flies
100
at
flies.
one time, and then you'd go around and kill them. They'd be lying on the floor. You'd come back an hour later, and they would be there more.
Okay. There's something about green slime. What was that on the wall in the movie? This green slime comes out of the walls, right? George, did that happen?
As the movie did it, not exactly, no.
Yeah.
It was more of a gelatin kind of substance that we thought the children had somehow mixed something up and spilled it around the house. The next time it happened, the kids were at school, and there was just no way to explain how it got there.
Did you all call, a contractor or a carpenter or anybody to come and look and try to?
We
Sure.
had several repairmen come in. Telephone repairman came 3 times because each time we would try and communicate with the priest, we would run into faulty connections. We had extreme fluctuations in the heat, between 40 and 50 degree fluctuations. 3 times the serviceman came in. One time he was there, he heard the furnace functioning, and yet there was no heat within the house. The temperature was at 40, and yet the thermostat read 80.
Okay, but you had somebody inspect the entire heating system. Goodness knows those of us who live in the north know what can happen with heating systems in a house, especially old houses. George, there was also something about black, make it in the toilets, the water black and making the ceramic, the bowls or whatever
The
black.
china itself, it wasn't in the water. The china itself turned black, and at first it was one bathroom and then another and then another, so that by the time the investigators got there, a number of them was still black. It was still that way. There was never any reasonable explanation.
Did you have a plumber come in? I mean, when you first spotted
No,
it,
there wasn't. It wasn't a problem with the water. The water was clean. It was normal.
But did you invite any contractor, somebody like that, just to come say, hey, what's wrong with the toilets?
No, because
Yeah.
one of the things we found was the keyholes would ooze a black substance, which was of the same nature and appearance as that which was on the porcelain in the toilets. And when the investigative team came on March 6, 1976, the substance was still on the keyholes, and they were able to obtain samples of it because it was never in a moist condition, and they wouldn't do physical damage to the door. In other words, carve out a piece of wood without our consent.
Had either of you had any experience before with the occult or the supernatural? Ever before?
We didn't believe in it.
Were you afraid for your children? Why didn't you leave earlier than the 28 days if you were terrified?
Well, it was our house. First of all, we had never intended to give it up. Even after we moved out, we intended to find out what was wrong and move back in there. Mm-hmm. That's why the investigation was held, and people from different psychic research groups that at least we could check their credentials were called in and asked to come in. We've been asked many times why we stayed so long. It's very hard to remember the exact emotions or the moment of why you would make a decision and why not.
But you finally did make it.
Well, by the time we left, we had lost a considerable amount of weight. Kathy was passing out quite regularly. I had lost over 26 pounds. And we were just reacting from one happening to another. We weren't
So you were generally
we weren't thinking, yes, as we normally would.
Jim, you played George in the movie,
Mm-hmm.
and you did research this and worked on it and so forth. You smiled. Do you believe them?
Do I? Yeah, when I'm sitting here with them, yes, I do. And I've watched George, and I've watched, you've been an actor, David, and you kind of know how to watch for telltale signs when you're doing research and watching the people. And we also, you get an insight. And I can't say that looking over the story, I believe the book as it's presented totally. Mm-hmm. But sitting with these people, it's hard to deny a lot of the facts too. George gave up a lot of money.
Yeah.
More than I think that he would make on the book.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Why would you keep up working on this if it was terrifying and not a pleasant experience? Why don't you just leave it behind you and forget it and move on to other things?
Things of this nature happen quite frequently. And when they happen
to you?
Families, no, not to us.
Yeah.
This was something we learned from the investigators and the psychics that came in. And when it happens to a family, usually they close the door and they don't talk about it.
Yeah.
And unless these things are talked about, they'll never be understood.
We went out when the movie was being filmed, Jim. We went out to the house and talked to the couple who live in the house, or did a year ago. And they said they'd had no problems whatsoever. Everything was just fine. They implied that this is all a big hoax.
Well, one of the things we're very happy with is 4 weeks ago, both of us were subjects of a polygraph test.
Right.
It was given by Chris Gugas and Michael Rice. And we both passed with flying colors. We were tested separately on it.
Is the movie fun?
Well, the movie's very effective, I think. And I'll tell you, when I was sent the script,
just another minute
we're all
left.
at the mercy of scripts in this business. I read it. I was working on another picture, and I didn't have much time, and I read it quickly, and they wanted an answer. And I just thought this is going to make a terrific movie. And when I called, I said, let's get involved. And the agency said, why don't you pick up the book tomorrow? And I said, oh, yeah, there's a book. And then the next day, I found out it was a true story. I wasn't aware of it. And so my involvement from the beginning was really sort of naive. Mm-hmm. And I just took it as something that was going to be a wonderful movie, and it is. I didn't realize what I was getting into.
George and Kathy Lutz, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much,
David Lutz, living in Southern California. Weather's better out there.
Yeah.
Jim, good seeing you again.
Good seeing you, David. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll be back after these words from General Foods Kool-Aid.
Okay, so it was a little bit longer than I expected, but yes, indeed, this was a rare interview clip I was able to find of George and Kathy Lutz. There is another one out there that does exist. I think it's actually on Vimeo, though, but I didn't want to add both clips knowing that it would take up most of the time. But it's also really cool that they actually had James Brolin, who plays George in the movie, be on the same interview set. Now, that was obviously the story that George and Kathy Lutz had told for years. But as we get to the conclusion of this slideshow, I think you guys, for those that don't know about it, I think you guys might be a little bit surprised that the reality is quite different from what you see. Now, let me just see here for 1 second here. I just want to give a quick shout out again to everybody who's been watching. Good to see you, Tom. Hey, Robin. Thanks for tuning in. Yes, pest invasions are real. That definitely is true. But I'd find it awfully hard to believe that they, that, for example, in this case, the flies would keep coming back like they did. So let me just, that was on my personal chat. Who do we got up? Let me see who we still have on the things chat. Oh yes, he definitely did, Jeremy. Yes, he did. But the debate about the accuracy of the Amityville horror continues. The various owners of the house since the Lutz family left in 1976 have reported no problems while living there. On March 18th, 1977, Jim and Barbara Cromartie purchased the home from the bank. Although plagued by hordes of tourists searching for supernatural phenomenon, the Cromarties managed to live there happily for a decade. Nothing weird happened, except for people coming by because of the book and the movie. Nonetheless, they found it necessary to change the address to confuse the curious. And I'm surprised that didn't show up first, but that is one of the few photos I was able to find of Jim and Barbara Cromartie. I mean, there's a few other pictures, but usually it's with them with other people. This was among one of the few that I was able to find with just the two of them. During a press conference to refute the Lutz's allegations, the Cromarties issued a 2-page statement. An excerpt read, "The quiet village of Amityville, Long Island, has been made infamous by a hoax. It will possibly never be the same. It is Long Island's equivalent to Watergate. None of us would be here today if a responsible publisher and author had not given credibility to two liars and allowed them the privilege of putting the word true on a book in which, in all actuality, is a novel. The credibility of the hoax stems from using a charlatan Catholic priest who has been banned from performing his religious duties by the Diocese of Rockville Center, the equivalent of disbarment of a lawyer. This charlatan priest has been involved with a complicity to a lie and therefore deserves no credibility and should be dealt with accordingly." The Cromarties sued the Lutzes, Jay Anson, and the publishers of the Amityville Horror. Their multi-million-dollar suit argued that not only was the book an invasion of privacy, but that false misrepresentations were made willfully and solely for commercial exploitation. Eventually, the parties arrived at an undisclosed settlement. Now, this is actually a photo of the entire family, the entire Cromartie family that lived there after the Lutzes. I don't know why that's kind of odd. I'll have to fix the picture later. I don't know why it's so far off to the side like that. Whoops. As a child, Jim Cromartie played in the house, and both he and his wife were determined to make the home a part of the community again. I don't know why it says as a child. That's kind of weird. I don't remember putting that in, unless I just happened. That somehow may have got caught in the copying. Both he and his wife were determined to make the home a part of the. You know what? I'm just gonna fix this really quickly because this is just bothering me. Give me 1 second here, guys. Let's fix that. Let's fix that up quickly. I don't normally do this during the show, but I just wanted to get rid of that. There we go. Let's see. Okay, that is not what I wanted to show up. Damn it, hang on. I'm having a technical issue.
Royalty-free music.
Get out of here. Okay, give me 1 second here. Geez, if only StreamYard was a lot more easier to share. Okay, there we go. All right, so Jim Cromartie, both he and his wife were determined to make the home a part of the community again. Eventually, the curiosity seekers proved unbearable, and the Cromarties were forced to put the house on the market. They left friend they left their friend Frank Birch to tend to the property and act as a house sitter while they were away. Neither Mr. Birch nor the Cromartys ever reported any supernatural happenings. The Cromartys eventually moved back in and took the house off the market. In 1979, the Cromartys opened their home to newsmen to disprove stories about the eerie happenings. Now, unfortunately, I was unable to find any of that kind of footage. However, after we get past this slideshow, this is probably the most I'll ever show involving clips. I do have another rare clip that I'm going to show you guys, but here's something else that you guys are going to be quite surprised by, and this will also kind of help draw the conclusion for part 3. And although the Cromartys were very skeptical, get this. However, around the same time the movie came out, the Cromartys secretly contacted paranormal investigator Peter Jordan to investigate their home with a medium. The medium, Ron Magritte, I think that's how you say it, picked up on high energy throughout the home. He believed someone practiced black magic in the house. In a later interview with Barbara in 2015, when questioned about the supposed investigation, she declined to give any comments on the subject. They remained in the house happily until 1987, when 19-year-old David Roskin, Barbara's son from a previous marriage, had a heart attack and reportedly passed away in a hospital. Now, this was another, again, I was actually surprised to find this photo than the original one. That's obviously a photograph of them when they were much. Oh, that's why the photo's centered then. There's no need to fix it then. But that was, that's pretty much the only photo I was able to find of Jim and Barbara later in life. Now, Jim died in 2019 at the age of 87, and Barbara died peacefully in her sleep in 2020. So they just died very recently. Now, okay. Oh, yes. Now, this is something I think you guys will be interested in. This is the other rare clip. This is aside from the supposed newsmen that actually came into the house, so they can disprove the stories of what the Lutzes were giving. There is one other news clip here that I was able to find of the Cromartys. This was basically dealing with the unwanted attention that they had. The Cromartys themselves are not actually interviewed in this clip, but you do see the frustration that they do give involving all the tourists and curiosity seekers that showed up.
The Cromartys who bought the house have packed up and left, driven away by an onslaught of tourists and pranksters who still continue to come and gawk, not fooled by the now changed address out in front. And why did you come by tonight to look at this house?
See what that book was all about and everything about the house, the way it looked, and all the things that people say about it.
Oh, we just wanted to see what it was like. I guess we just specifically came from Chicago to see it.
But do you believe
Chicago.
Yeah, I do. They're kind of creepy. They gave me the creeps that...
Why do you believe it when the present owners say there's no truth to it at all? And they've been living here for almost 2 years.
Oh, I didn't know they had present owners. I thought it was deserted.
A man who said he was a friend of the Cromartys also came by, but insisted he not be photographed. You say a friend of yours lives here and you've been in the house. Is there any truth to all these stories that it's haunted and there are weird smells and slime and all those other things?
Nothing at all. It's all a bunch of lies.
Well, how do you feel about all these tourists coming by and the movie opening and all of this? What do you think of that?
Well, I live right down the road and it's a pain in the neck because you can't even get down the block.
But when we started rolling the cameras, I had no idea just how much of a pain in the neck it was for the man now temporarily living in the house. As Frank Birch and another man came to the porch, I walked up the driveway to talk to him. He refused and demanded I leave. I thought I did so fairly quickly, but apparently not quickly enough. Within minutes, a police car arrived, then another. Birch came out and told the police he was pressing charges. My crime, trespassing. I begged for mercy. None was forthcoming. I was shown into a police car and driven to the Amityville police station. Inside, officers pulled out 8 separate forms to be signed. I sat by nervously while my camera crew waited outside. Mercifully, I was finally able to convince Mr. Birch that I had not intended to cause any problems and had not in fact been aware I was trespassing. He signed forms rescinding his charges. I signed forms releasing him from charges of false arrest. We shook hands, and after more than an hour in captivity, I was finally free.
Man, I can't imagine how much Frank Birch and the Cromartys had to deal with. It's kind of funny that one of those, for people who come up to those kind of, these houses practically, it just, I mean, seriously, if you think that, just because a house was featured in a movie and you think that the house is considered deserted when really, for the most part, it's just no different than any other house in the neighborhood. It still doesn't matter whether it's deserted or if it's inhabited or whatever. And I would probably give this advice just like anybody would. Do not ever trespass on houses or any of these kind of places. Even if they're not owned, they are still considered private property. That's how we always do with these paranormal investigations. Is always want to ask for permission. So you got to get permission to come up, to head to these locations and do these investigations. So please, especially for a lot of the younger folks out there, you saw what happened in this clip. Do not trespass. Okay, so I forgot this is I got one other clip. Now, this was actually a clip from the show That's Incredible. This was shot back in the early 1980s. I just got to just watch my time here just to make sure. Okay, so we're about half hour. Okay, so I got another half hour left to go. This is probably the best you could ever get to an actual investigation that occurred in the house. So this was from a show, like I said, an episode from the show That's Incredible. This was shot in the early 1980s. And once again, you're going to see a lot of truth coming out of this. So I apologize for the quality. Thanks for tuning in, Robin.
How would you feel if the goblins of Halloween occupied your house all year long? Even the most ardent prayers couldn't rid one house of ghoulies and ghosties, at least as they were reported to most of America in a recent shocking book and motion picture. The unexplainable and terrifying became commonplace in the House of Horror.
On the night of November 13th, 1974, Ronald DeFeo brutally murdered 6 members of his family in their lovely house in Amityville, Long Island. In late 1975, George and Kathy Lutz and their 3 children moved in. A month later, they moved out. They claimed they'd experienced a horrifying period of demonic possession. The house stood empty for a long time. After all, why would anybody want to call such a ghost-plagued house home? Jim Cromartie and his family bought and moved into the house. Let him tell you why.
I've had uncles and aunts of mine who...
Let me just pause this just for a quick second, guys. I do apologize. This is actually a clip I haven't even seen yet, so I'm kind of... whoops, I'm sorry. This was quite just as amazing to me as it is for those who are watching. Let me fast forward. Sorry about that.
Ronald DeFeo... In late 1975, George and Kathy Lutz and their 3 children moved in. A month later, they moved out. They claimed they'd experienced a horrifying period of demonic possession. The house stood empty for a long time. After all, why would anybody want to call such a ghost-plagued house home? Jim Cromartie and his family bought and moved into the house. Let him tell you why.
I've had uncles and aunts of mine who have played in this house as children, played in this house myself as a child. And there's no doubt about the tragedy that took place. To be very honest, the reason we bought the house at the time was it was a good buy.
And because we loved the house. It is a beautiful house. And we really felt that once we moved in, we changed the number, we repainted it, and we made it a beautiful part of the community again. And we really thought everything would just go away. We never dreamt what would take place here. The fame of the Amityville house brought the gawkers, the tourists, and the traffic jammers. It was such a pleasant scene inside here, and outside it was so insane. It was right after the book had come out. People all fighting to have their picture taken in front of the house, and here we were trying to have a lovely, quiet Sunday afternoon together, and this insanity was out there. When they came, they literally, on Christmas Eve, attacked the house. And, 3 cars. 1 car drove all over the front lawn. Another one watched for the police, and the other group all all men about 20 to 25, I guess. The other groups just stood out on the front porch and urinated all over it
Jeez.
on Christmas Eve.
Wow.
The normally law-abiding community faced new police problems. Amityville Police Sergeant Pat Camarada.
One occasion, after the Luxes moved out, a man came to the house in a van with 6 goats. And he wanted the goats to eat the grass and chase the evil spirits away. So we have a lot of cuckoos.
One of the police officers saw 2 young couples outside of the building. One of the girls was in hysterics, more or less. And the policeman figured maybe he could help her, and he asked her what the trouble was. She told him she had vibrations, and she was all upset because of the house. He told her, you should not buy the house, you buy the yacht club, and she turned it off just like that.
As a result of the story of Lutz's 28-day stay, this small piece of Long Island real estate gained an international reputation. The Amityville Horror told the Lutz's story, and in a way created a legend. There are some people, particularly the Cromarties, who are highly skeptical of the incident. For example, it's written,
quote, January 13th. Amityville was hit by another storm of hurricane strength. Sleet was pelting all of Long Island.
It's a very simple thing to write to the National Weather Bureau down in Washington just for the weather on the dates that coincide with the book. And they will see for themselves that none of the weather coincides. Not one day, not one snowflake, not one raindrop.
Quote, December 29th. Father Mancuso could no longer ignore the red splotches in the palms of his hands, nor the excruciating pain he felt when he touched the sore spots.
Ooh.
As far as the priest goes, he testified in federal court in Brooklyn in October, I think it was, that he had only come to this house once to bless it. As far as the rest of the book goes, none of it was true. He did not have any of the afflictions on his hands and the sores and the stench and anything that was mentioned either in the book or in the movie. None of that was true, and this is under oath in federal court.
the transcript of the trial does not reflect the denial by the priest. In fact, no specific mention is made of sores and afflictions that he suffered, either pro or con. Film audiences were led to believe that a window shattered.
This is the window. You can see that it's exactly the same as it has been for the last 51 years. The house was built in 1928. There's all the old paint, the old putty. Nothing's been disturbed. Perfectly innocent windows. This is the original banister. In the book, it was supposed to have been torn out of its hinges and completely demolished or something. As you can see, it is the original banister. It's been here, like everything else, 50 years, and it's still in perfect condition.
Quote, January 2nd. Holding his nose, George forced open the paneling and shone his flashlight around the red-painted walls. The stench of human excrement was heavy in the confined space. It formed a choking fog.
My name is Patty Camarado. I was friends with Allison DeFeo, a girl who was murdered with the rest of her family here in 1974. This I'm going to show you is the mysterious red room that's so noted for in the book. This door, which they say was never here, was here, is here, always will be here, I suppose. This is the red room.
Oh, the red room.
Nothing more than a storage area where Allison and her brothers and I used to keep toys. Just red, you know? There was never any feeling of spirit presence or ghosts or any sort of thing like that. It was just a play area. We used to keep toys. Nothing more than that.
This is the door of our home. In the book, it became a 250-pound door, which was completely blown out of its frame and off its hinges. As you can see, it's the original door, solid as a rock, immovable, and quite innocent.
We just hope that sooner or later we're going to knock a complete hole in this charade that's been created, and hope that we can just get back to living a normal life again, not have to worry about when we come home at night that there are 30 people in the yard, that maybe we'll have to call the police again, to give them a break, to give the neighbors a break.
Its reputation to this day has bedeviled the Cromarties, who are clearly convinced there are no ghosts or demons or ghouls or rattling chains or bloody screams. But would you live in this house?
Wow. Okay, so like I said earlier, I actually did not see this clip. So that was quite surprising to me, as it probably was to you guys. Anyways, I'm gonna have to move just a little bit quicker because I only do have about 20 minutes left. Now, before I forget, now this photo right here, believe it or not, guys, I mean, this photo is not an actual image that I grabbed from Google Image. This was actually sent to me by one of my fellow investigators and right hand men, Tom McNicholas. Although he was not like I would assume he was not like some of these other curious onlookers. This was a photo that he took back in 1986. Now you can clearly see that the house still has the eye windows to it, but now had the fake windows in between. So this was pretty much right around the time they started kind of remodeling and changing parts of the house in order to deter all these curious onlookers from visiting the house. So but that I gotta be honest though, Tom took a really great photo of that house. So Tom, I wanted to make sure I gave you the credit for that. Thank you so much for sending me this rare photograph. I know, of course, there's a few other photographs, obviously, that are on Google, but to be actually be sent a personal image from someone who I actually know, for that I thank you. So thank you, Tom. Now, on August 17th, 1987, Peter and Jean O'Neill purchased the house from the Cromarties. During their stay, they changed the famed eye windows to square ones and filled in the DeFeo pool. Since the yearly property taxes are in excess of $10,000, neighbors state that the O'Neills moved to save money for their children's college tuition. On June 10th, 1997, Brian Wilson, and no, not the Beach Boys, Brian Wilson, purchased the house for approximately $310,000. Since then, Wilson has renovated the property. Among the many improvements, he has strengthened the foundation of the sinking boathouse and added a sunroom to the back of the house. And that was actually, and again, you could see that the classic eye windows now have been taken out. This was taken back in the early 90s. I think this was photographed back in either 1990 or 1991. The role of Father Baccaro in the story has been given considerable attention. During the course of the lawsuit surrounding the case in the late 1970s, Father Baccaro stated in a affidavit, I can't even say the word, of the lawsuit, that his only contact with the Lutzes concerning the matter had been by telephone. Other accounts say that Father Baccaro did visit the house, but experienced nothing unusual there. The claims of physical damage to the locks, doors, and windows were rejected by Jim and Barbara Cromartie, as you guys saw in the clip, who bought the house for $55,000, equivalent to $235,000 in 2020, in March 1977. Barbara argued that they appeared to be the original items and had not been repaired. The Cromarties also revealed that the Red Room was a small closet in the basement, and it would have been known to the previous owners of the house, the Lutzes, that is, because it was not concealed in any way. The claim made in Chapter 11 of the book that the house was built on a site where the local Shinnecock Indians had once abandoned the mentally ill and the dying were rejected by local Native American leaders. And again, that's actually one of the few photos I was able to find of the Red Room itself. And I don't even know if I'd really consider that a Red Room, since most of the walls were already kind of chipping apart. The claim of cloven hoof prints in the snow on January 1st, 1976 was rejected by researchers Rick Moran and Peter Jordan, whose investigation revealed that there had been no snowfall at that time. Neighbors reported nothing unusual during the time that the Lutzes were living there. Police officers are depicted visiting the house in the book and 1979 film, but records show that the Lutzes did not call the police during the period that they were living on Ocean Avenue. There was also no bar in Amityville called the Witch's Brew at the time. Critics, including Stephen Kaplan, have pointed out that changes were made to the book as it was reprinted in different editions. In May, George and Kathy Lutz filed a lawsuit against William Weber, the defense lawyer for Ronald DeFeo Jr. at his trial. Paul Huffman, a writer working on an account of the hauntings, Bernard Burton, and Frederick Mars, both alleged clairvoyants who examined the house, along with Good Housekeeping magazine, the New York Sunday News, and the Hearst Corporation. The Lutzes alleged misappropriation of names for trade purposes, invasion of privacy, and mental distress. The claims against the news corporations were dropped, and the remainder of the lawsuit was heard by Brooklyn U.S. District Court Judge Jack B. Weinstein. In September 1979, Judge Weinstein dismissed the Lutz's claims. In the September 17th issue of People magazine, William Weber wrote, "I know this book is a hoax. We created this horror story over many bottles of wine." This refers to a meeting that Weber is said to have had with George and Kathy, during which they discussed what would later become the outline of Anson's book. Judge Weinstein also expressed concern about the conduct of William Weber and Bernard Burton relating to the affair, stating, "There is a very serious ethical question when lawyers become literary agents." George Lutz maintained that that events in the book were mostly true. In June, George and Kathy Lutz took a polygraph test relating to their experiences at the house. The polygraph tests were performed by Chris Guges, I think, and Michael Rice, who at the time were reportedly among the top 5 polygraph experts in America. The results, in Mr. Rice's opinion, did not indicate lying. Now, in 2005, a remake of the original Amityville Horror was released. Although the film is set in Long Island, the house used in this film is a real 1800s home in Salem, Wisconsin, that was temporarily converted to add the famous eye windows. The movie facade cost $60,000. After production, the movie facade remained on the house for a while and was eventually carefully removed. The famous evil eye windows were preserved in sections of the walls, which still have the movie bedroom wallpaper on the inside, and siding with old-looking movie paint on the outside. The windows were in good shape, but were aged to match the house using peeling paint. In 2017, an estate sale was held at the movie mansion, and the famous eye windows, which had been in the attic since filming, were sold. The buyer lives in the same neighborhood and has the windows on display. MGM claimed the remake was based on new information uncovered during research of the original events, but George later claimed nobody ever spoke to him or his family about the project. George registered the phrase, the Amityville Horror, as a trademark in 2002, and it is referred to as the Amityville Horror on his official website. When he initially heard it was underway, his attorney contacted the studio to find out what they had in the planning stages and to express Lutz's belief they didn't have the right to proceed without his input. 3 letters were sent and none were acknowledged. In June 2004, the studio filed a motion for declaratory relief in federal court, insisting they had the right to do a remake, and Lutz countersued, citing violations of the original contract that had continued through the years following the release of the first film. George described the 2005 remake as dry and sued the makers for breach of contract and defamation and libel. He objected particularly to the scene in the film where the male lead, named as George Lutz, played by Ryan Reynolds, is shown killing the family dog with an axe. The film also shows that George Lutz character building coffins for members of his own family. Lutz claimed that the film producers embellished or fabricated events portrayed in the 1979 version and the 2005 remake. He also claimed that the producers of the 2005 film did not involve his family and that they used his name without permission. The defamation claim was dismissed by a Los Angeles court in November of that year, while other issues related to the lawsuit remained unresolved at the time of George Lutz's death. Now, I got one final video here that we're going to officially conclude. I'm going to just show the trailer for the remake as I had. So this is the final trailer I'm going to show. Give me 1 second here.
When the business is good, we're going to have the greatest house.
Just want to make sure that. Hang on, I got an issue here. Damn it. Hang on a second, guys. I don't know what just happened here, but okay, only got 10 minutes left, so let's try this again.
Houses here are way out of our price range. When the business is good, we're going to have the greatest house. It's beautiful.
This is an amazing house. You are going to love it.
Holy. What's the deal? Lifetime. So, what's the catch?
There was a crime, a murder in the house. And several people, a family.
Accused claims he heard voices coming from within the house.
Well, houses don't kill people. To a perfect house, to a perfect family.
Who are you talking to?
The girl who lives in my closet.
And what's her name?
Jody.
Who's her? Just seeing things, I guess. When did you come back to bed?
I can't sleep.
This is my mind. There was a family lived here some time ago. They had a similar problem.
I'm living in their house. We need to get out of here. Just back up and go.
Everything we have is in this house.
It's okay, Mommy. Jody won't hurt you. The man who lives here, he says he's bad.
Almighty God, bless and sanctify this house.
Open the door. It's not opening. I can't open it. George? There's something evil in my house.
Yeah, Josh, I just saw your comments. I mean, yes, indeed. I wasn't too crazy about I wasn't very much into the remake myself. I mean, there's some interesting moments to it, but for the most part, I'm just not very much big onto that too. Okay, that is not where I want it to be. I don't know why it keeps let's try that again. Okay. Okay, I don't know how I ended up on this same segment, but okay, we're just okay. Hang on, let me just make sure you guys can see the. I don't know what's going on here, but for some reason it's not. Oh man, this thing sometimes gets so frustrating. We're just about right at the end, so we're gonna end right on time. I just got 5 minutes left. If I can get the damn thing to. Okay, that's not what I was looking for. You only got like 3 slides left, so bear with me for just a moment here. Okay. All right. Just want to make sure that the screen is, you guys can see it. Okay. All right, so now we're finally going to get to the end of this. Kathy Lutz died of emphysema in 2004 at the age of 57, and George Lutz died of heart disease in 2006 at the age of 59. Prior to their deaths, the couple had divorced in the late 1980s, but remained on good terms. Their children have tended to shy away from the horror spotlight, specifically daughter Missy. Now, this is somebody I think you guys probably will get the idea of where this is going to go now. However, in 2005, Christopher Quarantino came forward and claimed to the Seattle Times that although the book was not a hoax, it was extremely amplified. Christopher, who was 7 years old at the time, had claimed that little paranormal activity took place in the home, but says that what did happen was brought about by George's occult rituals. Remember what I was saying earlier about when the Crow-Marties secretly brought in a paranormal investigator and medium, and they said that somebody practiced black magic? I think you guys get the idea of where this black magic may have came from. But anyways, for Christopher, however, he regularly clashed with his stepfather and moved away from the family at age 16. Quarantino also said that George was obsessed with the occult and had exaggerated some paranormal incidents he believes did occur when he was a child. He said that events in the Amityville horror books and movies have been stretched to the point of fiction and the purposeful dissemination of information by his stepfather, George Lutz. He's a professional showman, in my opinion, Quarantino said. I just feel as though we were being exploited. The story that my parents put forward is that it was the house's fault. Quarantino told HuffPost Weird News. He says he had no knowledge of the occult, but he did. That was the trigger. To do what he was doing in that house was sure to cause a problem, referencing his stepfather's allegedly attempting to contact the occult. Part of the reason Lutz may still be affected by what happened in the house is because, part of the reason Quarantino, I meant to change that to Quarantino, may still be affected by what happened in the house is because the entities there have never left him alone. Whatever it is has remained in our lives. I call on Jesus Christ when it flares up, and it seems to be a cycle of some sort. Although there have been many Amityville books and movies, Christopher hopes to one day tell his own version. The kid's story has never been told, he said. I was 7. I had no say. Currently, Quarantino does air conditioning and remodels in Arizona and admits that the Amityville experience gave him a perspective on buying a home that others don't have. I thought disclosure was the law in every state. But it's not, he said. If you're buying a house, you should look into what happened there before. Now, I should also add, too, that in 2013, his brother Daniel Lutz also came forward and appeared in the documentary My Amityville Horror, in which he echoes the original stories told by his mother and stepfather and remained adamant that the hauntings happened. So obviously, I don't know exactly what the relationship is between them nowadays, but obviously they're telling two different stories. But that was the only time Daniel ever actually came forward and told his version of the story. As we all know, Chris, has been on a lot of different has been at different paracons, couple different shows to tell what really happened. So no, since I actually met him myself at the Chicago Ghost Con a couple of years ago, until something is fully straight, I pretty much believe Chris's story. That's just my opinion. Daniel, who was 9 years old at the time, also makes additional claims that both he and George were possessed and that George demonstrated telekinetic abilities, but his reliability has been questioned. So you can kind of understand why they basically, why his story is a little bit more suspicious than Chris's. However, it should be noted, though, that both brothers strongly suggest that George is dabbling in inviting mysterious and dangerous forces into their lives due to his interest in the occult, may have initiated the demonic events. Now, Since the renovation was anything but cheap, it is quite preposterous to think that a malevolent force resides there. The only thing the current house owners want is for the hoax to end and for the tourists to leave them alone so they may enjoy their property in peace. Today, the house known as 112 Ocean Avenue still exists, but it has been renovated and the address changed in order to discourage sightseers from visiting. The famous quarter round eye windows have been removed, and the house looks considerably different from its depictions in the films. The house in Tom's River, used as the location for the first three films, has also been modified for the same reason, as well as the house in Wilmington, briefly used as the location for the fourth film, and in Salem, used as the location for the remake. There have been no further reports of paranormal activity from the recent residents of the now 108 Ocean Avenue home. The house that was once purchased for $80,000 in 1975 was recently sold for $950,000. In May 2010, the house was placed on the market with an asking price of $1.15 million. In August, the house was sold by Brian Wilson to an unknown local resident for $950,000. On August 21st, the departing owner held a moving sale. Oh shoot, I gotta end this quickly. Held a moving sale at the house, and hundreds of people turned up for the event. They were allowed to go inside the house, but not to visit the upstairs rooms or the basement. The notorious house has passed through the hands of several owners since the Lutzes lived there, and no one else has ever reported any spooky happenings. And that concludes it, guys. We are now officially at the end of the trilogy of the Amityville Horror. I'm going to just give a very quick shout out for everybody who's tuned in. Okay, I'm not going to be able to read all of them. I'll have to respond to them later. But Jeremy, you're good to keep going as far as Things Network goes. Jeremy, I'd love to do that, but at the same time, though, I don't know if there's another show that's waiting for me to end on the Pack channel. But I'm just going to say very quickly, guys, wow, this was quite a show, or a trilogy, if you will. I just got to say, I want to thank you guys so much for these last 3 weeks for actually being able to listen from beginning to end of the whole Amityville horror story. I'm sure I'm probably going to do it again, probably in the future. Of course, I got to make some corrections on parts of the slideshow, which I will do immediately. Thank you very much, Natalie. So again, I really can't thank you guys enough. I mean, this is. I mean, I think a lot of you guys are going to agree. This was probably among some of the best shows I've done so far. I mean, episodes I've done so far on the show. For next week's episode, which I'm going to just announce quickly because I really got to get off here. Next week, we're going to be looking into, I'm sure some of you guys know this place, Wolf Manor out in California. Sadly, it's no longer there, but I'm still going to tell the story whatsoever. Again, I do apologize for not responding back to a lot of the comments here. Again, I'll just respond back through typing. Yes, Jeremy, it definitely was. Thank you. Thank you, Josh. Very much appreciate it. Thank you, Natalie. But no, seriously, guys, I'm very. I mean, this was quite a journey to it. So, but anyways, yeah, that's what we're gonna do next week. We're gonna look into Wolf Manor. Again, I can't thank you guys all enough for this. This was a lot of fun. I can't wait to do it again. And I will see you guys next week. You guys all have a great night.